the Kansas City Chiefs offseason preview. We have the picture up on the screen right now. I think that's the question everybody's wondering. What's next for the Kansas City Chiefs? So right now, they have their negative in cap space, minus $19 million in the cap space department. And that's because they locked up a lot of their key players long term. Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Chris Jones, Frank Clark. They might have locked up Travis Kelce. I wouldn't rule it out. I'm not sure. I haven't been keeping up with that situation. But they do have 24 free agents, and these are the notable ones. Sammy Watkins, Alex Okafor, Austin Reiter, Demarcus Robinson, Le'Veon Bell, Mike Remmers, Kelechi Osemele, Anthony Sherman, Andrew Wiley, Steven Wisniewski, Daniel Sorensen, Bashad Breeland, and Damian Wilson. That's a total of 6 starters on the offensive side of the football and 3 starters on the defensive side of the football. So, in your opinion, Jack, which of these players should the Chiefs be hell-bent on bringing back into the building?
Well, I think the offensive line is the place you have to start. And I don't know which offensive lineman exactly you would look at bringing back. A couple of them had solid years. I know Kelechi Osemele had a pretty good year, but you have to weigh, with age, injuries, there are a bunch of different factors on who are the guys you want to bring back. But I think the offensive line, at least retaining one of those guys is very important, and then filling out that line, whether it be through free agency. I wouldn't rule out that maybe trading up in the draft to get a guy like Eichenberg or Alex Leatherwood from Alabama, but they need to shore up that offensive line, because I was saying it before during the Super Bowl segment, their one glaring weakness in the game, I thought, was the offensive line. It was their Achilles heel. It was what killed them. And I feel like that will be the thing that could kill them in the future. They have some holes on their defense that they have to shore up, but to me, you can bear some holes on your defense with Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce on offense, as long as you have at least a decent offensive line. So I would start by figuring out the offensive line. I'm not sure out of those guys who exactly I would bring back, but I would say at least one of those guys has to be retained.
See, for me, I think this is a pretty easy pick. I think Sammy Watkins goes, Le'Veon Bell goes, Demarcus Robinson, there's a chance he stays, but he probably will go to Mike Remmers, maybe for depth, but he might go. Kelechi Osemele, he was pretty good this season, but he was injured, so because of that, I think he won't be retained. I think the 2 guys that stand out to me on the offensive line that should be retained are Andrew Wiley and Austin Reiter. I think Austin Reiter is the one that should be retained. It should be the number one priority for the Chiefs to bring him back. He was very good this season, and I kind of have to disagree with you, Jack, when you said that the offensive line is their weakness. I think that in the game against the Tampa Bay Bucks, it was their weakness, no doubt about it. But the Chiefs have Mitchell Schwartz, an all-pro tackle, coming back that was injured that did not play. Austin Reiter has been phenomenal all year. He's their center, so you need a good center for the continuity of the offensive line to be good. And their guard, Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, who opted out of the season because of COVID last season, is going to come back. So I think there are 2 positions on the line that they have to fill, tackle and getting another guard, because Eric Fisher tore his Achilles. Yeah. Who knows if he's going to play in 2021? We are not sure. They're minus $19 million in the cap space department, and I think if they cut Eric Fisher, they would save $12 million. That would still put them over the cap, but they would save a lot of money by that. So because of that, I think if they cut Eric Fisher and try to find a replacement in free agency, that would do them wonders. Also, this may be a hot take, but if they cut Tyrann Mathieu, they would save about $15 million. And at this point, is paying $15 million for a safety really that worth it? He was the heart and soul of that defense, so it's going to be hard to move on from him. But you got to think about that, especially with their cap situation. But ultimately, I think they have to bring back Austin Reiter. And right now, his projected market value is $11 million. So we'll see if they bring him back. They might not have the money to do it, but that would be the guy that I would prioritize. Now I'm going to ask you right now, who are your free agent targets for the Kansas City Chiefs to fill these holes?
Well, I think that they should look at the problem is their money situation. It doesn't leave them much breathing room in terms of big name free agents. Obviously, they should be looking at the offensive line, but I don't know if they're in the market for a guy like Thuney or Scherf. Like I don't think they would have the money to make somebody like that work, correct?
Nope.
So, I mean, then you have to start looking. Do you think that they're going to address the offensive line through the draft or through free agency?
I think it'll be a little bit of both. For me, I personally feel like there are some offensive linemen in this free agent market that are not going to be expensive and are going to be some serviceable guys. You look at a guy like Kelvin Beacom. He's not going to command too much money, and he's a serviceable guy, especially at left tackle. Austin Blythe is probably going to command a lot of money. He's a center that is going to be a free agent. He played for the Rams. But guys like John Feliciano, Brian Winters, I don't think Brian Winters is going to get a big payday. I think the Kansas City Chiefs could probably afford to bring in a guy like Brian Winters. And we've seen there was a point where he was the Jets' best offensive lineman. So he's not a scrub. You look at guys like DJ Fluker, Mike Upati. Those are all guys that are names out there that they wouldn't command much money in the first place. And to maybe win a Super Bowl with the Chiefs, it would make signing with the Chiefs that more lucrative, and that it would make them much more willing to take a pay cut.
Do you think a guy like Trent Williams at this age would take a pay cut to go and play like a team like the Chiefs?
I don't think he would, because Trent Williams could go to Tampa Bay and make more money and have the same opportunity. So I don't think so. So for me, the offensive line, that's I think those are some free agent targets. John Feliciano, Brian Winters, DJ Fluker, Mike Upati, and Kelvin Beacom. I think Austin Blythe and John Feliciano are going to command too much money. So some realistic options would be Brian Winters, DJ Fluker, and Mike Upati and Kelvin Beacom. And they're going to lose Sammy Watkins and DeMarcus Robinson in free agency most likely as well. And I think Brian Pringle may be a free agent. I think some guys to replace them could be John Ross, a former first-round pick out of that played for Cincinnati. He could be a guy who's a burner too. You pair him with Mecole Hardman and Tyreek Hill, that could be very dangerous. Khalif Raymond, another burner. Marvin Hall. Those are some guys that pop up, and I think they don't need to do too much in terms of wide receiver. This is a very wide receiver heavy draft, and they already have Tyreek Hill and Mecole Hardman and Travis Kelce. You don't got to do too much.
Yeah, and I would say with having a guy like Tyreek Hill, with having Hardman, two burners like that, and I know Tyreek Hill is more than a burner, but having two burners like that, I would maybe bring in more of a technician, a route runner, somebody that can work into the holes rather than just being a downfield target. I don't think they bring back Sammy Watkins. I think he can get more money somewhere else, and I think he'll go and chase the bag rather than taking a pay cut to play for the Chiefs again. But I think they could look for a more veteran-type wide receiver. Like, I don't think they need to be in on some big name. Maybe
Danny Amendola can be a guy to look for.
Yeah, maybe.
A slot.
How about a guy like Cole Beasley if the Bills end up cutting him?
I think Cole Beasley's is gonna command some money though.
You think so?
Yes, I think he is.
Even at his age with the injuries?
Coming off a 1,000-yard season, I think he is.
Yeah, but I would say a veteran route runner. I don't think they need anything too flashy with those weapons they have. So, and again, every position you look at here, it becomes more and more apparent how much of a hamstring that Patrick Mahomes' contract is, because they are paying him so much money.
But it's not just him now. Right now, it's a lot of guys. Like Anthony Hitchens is getting a boatload of money, and I don't even think Mahomes' contract has kicked in yet. So they're so bad in terms of their salary cap situation because of other guys they're paying, not even Mahomes. So Anthony Hitchens is commanding a lot of money, and he's an average linebacker at best. For me, I think a cornerback is another position they need to address. You have L'Jarius Sneed and Bashad Breeland. That's their two right now, that like their two best corners. I think you have to gamble on talent when you don't have the money to sign big names or established players. And guys that come up to me are Garyon Conley, who was a former first-round pick by the Raiders. He played for the Texans this past year. Kevin King, who didn't have a good playoffs with the Packers, and Vernon Hargreaves, who also played for the Texans. If you trust your staff and your defense, and Steve Spagnuolo, I do trust him to take this former first-round talent and turn them into viable starters, then you do it, because you're not going to – these guys are not going to command much money, and you got to get in some cornerback help to help out your secondary, because their secondary is not very good, and they are very undisciplined.
Yeah, and I think if you want to go in a different direction with it and just try and plug the holes with a quick stopgap, maybe a guy like Richard Sherman or Patrick Peterson would be willing to take a pay cut to go and play there and try and steal a championship ring late in their career. I know Richard Sherman is bouncing around the league every day talking about a new team that he would go and play for, so maybe the Chiefs would be a good fit, but again, it just depends. Like, I think that your route would be much more reasonable, trying to take a talent and get them to reach their potential rather than just signing stopgaps, because then you're going to have the same problem every year.
So in the draft, I'm pretty sure they're going to have the 31st pick in the first round. What do you think? Who do you think they should get with that pick? And who are some names that you kind of think they should go after in the draft?
I definitely think they should look to draft an offensive lineman with their first-round pick, and if they don't trade up, I think in a trade-up situation, they could look for somebody like an Alex Leatherwood, an Elijah Vera-Tucker, Wyatt Davis maybe. But if they don't, they could hope that Liam Eichenberg makes it to that late first-round pick. I don't know if he does. Do you think he falls that late?
There's a chance.
I don't know that he does. Maybe if he doesn't, Tevin Jenkins from Oklahoma State, I feel like starts going into that second tier of offensive linemen. But again, I don't think they need to do anything too crazy. I do think that those first 3 or 4 names would be targets, but I don't know that anybody outside of Eichenberg even has a chance at falling back to that late first-round pick.
Some guys that I'm looking at right now are Quinn Manners out of Wisconsin Whitewater. He played in the Senior Bowl, and he was one of the Senior Bowl standouts there. So in the past years, guys that have been performing at the Senior Bowl have made the transition to the NFL pretty well. They've transitioned pretty well. So Quinn Manners is a name to look out for. I think the Chiefs could get him in the second round, to be honest. But with that first round pick, these are the 2 names I'm looking for. Tevin Jenkins. He only allowed 4 pressures all year long in college football last season. He played for Oklahoma State. If they lose Eric Fisher and they don't fill that tackle spot in free agency, that's a guy that they should draft. And Asante Samuel Jr. from Florida State. He allowed a passer rating of 46.2 last year in college football, and he had a father that played in the NFL that was really, really good. So he has it in him. He has that DNA. And because of that, I'll take Asante Samuel in the first round. They need cornerback help. He's also very fast. And now the Chiefs would have 2 young cornerbacks in L'Jarius Sneed and Asante Samuel Jr. That's a really good building block to move forward with. I would take Asante Samuel Jr., but if they want to wait later to take a cornerback in the draft, Sean Wade out of Ohio State is a guy. Even though he didn't have a good college football playoffs, he has talent, so you can still possibly get him. Or a guy like Tyson Campbell out of Georgia. He's 6'2", so he has a size. Those are some names, but in my opinion, I'd draft Asante Samuel Jr. in the first round and try to get Quinn Manners in the second round.
I like the Sean Wade shout. I think that Ohio State does a great job developing defensive talent. So even though, like you said, he didn't have a great college football playoff, he was also matched up against some incredibly difficult offensive players to guard. You could see that Alabama wide receiving group. I don't think there was anybody in college football that could stop Devonta Smith one-on-one this year. So that was a really tough island to throw him on. So I think that would be a good pick, especially since I think his value took a hit a bit in the college football playoff. And then also a little bit later on, I think if they don't address the tackle with that first-round pick, they could get a guy like Dylan Radons. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, from North Dakota State. Or if they want to go receiver, another guy I think they could look at is a Moran St. Brown from USC. I thought he looked really good when I saw him, and I think he's a guy that could fall to them in the second round if they want to fill that third receiver spot, or I guess technically fourth if you want to say Mecole Hardman steps up and takes Sammy Watkins' spot.
So that's our offseason preview for the Kansas City Chiefs. What we think they should do in terms of re-signing their players in free agency and in the draft. What do you guys think the Kansas City Chiefs should do in the offseason? Comment that down below.